Moving on. This is our last character. By far the most insane character. We're moving on to Kaleb, who is Jake's oldest son. I'm guessing he's about 23 years old because him and Noah are close in age. What we know about Kaleb is not much. Not much at all. We've learned that he's mute. He doesn't talk. It's voluntary. And we learned that he hasn't spoken since he was 4 years old. We don't learn why that is until later in the book, but we do learn that it is trauma-induced. Everybody knows except Tiernan, but Tiernan never asked. And they would always ask her, don't you want to know? And she's like, I don't want to know unless Kaleb wants me to know. You know, like, it's not really my business, you know, why he doesn't talk. But Noah ends up telling her. And it's not like he just told her for fun. It's under, like, circumstances of, like, she needs to know. He ends up telling her he doesn't talk because it's trauma from his mother. When he was 4 years old, he was with his mom. She had him and took him to this house that she was stopping by at, maybe a friend's house. So she left him in the car and she was like, I'll be right back. I'll only be a few minutes. So she leaves him in the car, locks the doors, doesn't crack any windows, and goes into this house saying, I'm only going to be gone for a few minutes. She was gone for 4 days in this house. Kaleb is in this car. I don't know what season it is. Like, I don't know if it's summer. I don't know if it's spring. You know what I mean? Like, if it's summer, it's incredibly hot in the car. She leaves him in this car for 4 days. He's crying, yelling, trying to get someone to hear him. Nobody hears him. His father finds him. I mean, he has no food, no water. In the book, they said the only water he got was from a leak in the car roof when it rained. How freaking traumatic for a 4-year-old. And his father doesn't find him until 4 days later. And that was the beginning of his voluntary muteness. He stopped talking because he felt like his voice was the only thing he had control over. He made the choice to not let anyone hear his voice. Now, in that same breath, do I feel like, and we're gonna get into it, do I feel like that is an excuse for the way he treated Tiernan? No. Absolutely not. I am a firm believer in the spite of your trauma, and it also doesn't help that his father probably never put him in therapy, so he never got to work through it. I'm a firm believer in you can be different. You know what I mean? Like, I know the way you grow up and things that happen to you when you're younger influence you when you're older, but I'm a firm believer in that you can choose to be different. You know what I mean? Like, in a lot of cases, and this is just an example, in a lot of cases we see that children that got essayed when they were younger, maybe by, you know, someone they trusted or a family member or someone that just has a ton of power over them, they turn out to do the same thing when they're older. For example, this is not the greatest example, but R. Kelly. We learned that he was essayed or molested when he was younger, and he did the exact same thing when he got older. That might be a part of the reason why they did it, but I think you choose to be different. You know when you get older that is wrong, and that is something you should not do. So why do you still choose to do it? Especially when someone did it to you and you know the way it felt, the way it made you feel. I believe that you choose to be different from people that influenced you or things that happened to you when you were younger. So the reason I say that, and we're going to get into it now, is because the relationship between Kaleb and Tiernan is so incredibly complicated. This was the part of the book that frustrated me the most, was this tit for tat between Kaleb and Tiernan. Now, Kaleb is very hot and cold when it comes to Tiernan when she first got there. And this is the first explicit scene in the book. It doesn't lead anywhere. But this is one of the chapters that I warned you about in the beginning, that I said, if you're going to read the book and you've experienced maybe traumatic things in your life, maybe look out for that. It could be very triggering. This was the scene where I don't just think, but I feel like he SA'd her. This was when she first got to Jake's house, and you know, this was maybe the first night she might have been there, maybe the second, I don't know. But one of the things that I don't also like about this is speaking for this scene specifically, she, like, things will be happening to her in this scene and she'll be saying no, but then also the author will write in her head that she's kind of enjoying it. And I'm just like, but is she? Like, you know what I mean? I guess if the author writes it, then that's what it is. But I mean, he's touching you, you don't know who he is, he hasn't said a word to you, and he's coming up to you and trying to get in your pants. You know what I mean? Like, it's just very strange. That was her first interaction with Kaleb. So obviously after that, she's, you know, she doesn't like him. She's angry with him because she's like, I don't even know you. You tried to do things to me and then you don't even say a word to me. And Noah comes down and helps her because he hears her screaming. And it's almost, Noah like kind of brushes off his behavior. Like, he's laughing and he's like, oh, Tiernan, he doesn't talk. Like, you know, it's fine. Like, he was just hungry. Bro, what? Like, that is just an insane thing to say. And I feel like oftentimes throughout this book, Kaleb's behavior was brushed off or excused by his father and his brother. And I just didn't agree. I was just like, dude, I mean, I know he's mute and, you know, stuff, but that doesn't, and he's had trauma happen to him in the past, but that doesn't excuse that doesn't give you a reason to treat people like they're an object or just like a piece of meat. You know what I mean? So like I said, he's very hot and cold with Tiernan throughout the entire book. Like, one day he hates her, the next day he's like helping her, and it's like that throughout the entire book. He'll hate her one day, he'll love her the next day. And it's like, and it doesn't help that he doesn't talk, so we don't know. And there was never a chapter in his POV until the very end. We got one chapter with his POV. But I want to talk about this one scene. And if you know me personally, you know I'm not the easiest person to cry at things. I don't really cry at movies. I don't really cry at books. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not gonna say I never have, but it's hard for me to kind of, I guess, tap into that when I'm watching something and to cry for the character or whatever. But I will say, when I read this scene, I didn't cry, but I teared up because I felt this scene was so triggering. And I've never been through, you know, trauma, sexual trauma, but I felt like it could be so triggering to people who have been. And I'm going to tell you the chapters again. It was chapters 26 and 27 because they're a continuation of each other. And I'm going to say this in the most minimal of ways because I don't want this video to get flagged, and two, I don't want to trigger anybody. But if you feel like, you know, you will get triggered, I'll put a timestamp up here of when I'm done talking about this scene. So there was a scene where Tiernan was in the kitchen with Noah, and Noah was basically explaining to her, he was saying, I'm gonna be sad when you leave, because she was planning to leave in April to go to college because she is graduating high school. Bro, he said this thing, this is Noah, by the way. He said this thing that to me, if he said that to me, I would have been like, bro, that's a threat. Why would you say that to me? He basically was like, oh, what if I get you pregnant on purpose so you don't have to leave? Now, coming from someone who is not sure if they want to have kids in the future, that is a threat. And the fact that he just blatantly came out and said that to her is insanity to me. And I would have taken offense. I would have been like, did you really just say that to me? Like, are you crazy? Why would you say that? Whatever. Okay, that's besides the point. So they're having this moment in the kitchen and she's like kind of trying to comfort him because she's like, I'm gonna miss you too, and we don't have to think about that just yet. Kaleb comes in and sees them and gets jealous. So he comes in and kind of takes Tiernan away from Noah. Not like aggressively, but he kind of leads her away from Noah. And Noah looks at her and he's like, are you okay with this? And she's like, yeah, like I'm fine. So then he goes out into the shop with his dad. Kaleb takes Tiernan upstairs. He puts her in her room, closes the door, and bolts it shut. I am not joking. He bolts it shut. And she's just as confused as I was probably. And she's like, what are you doing? So she's trying to unlock the door. It's not unlocking. So she's banging on the door, yelling for someone to come and like unbolt her door. but her uncle and Noah are in the shop, so they can't hear her. Later that night, he comes back, and by this time she had wore herself out, so she's asleep, or like passed out. Not really passed out, but you know, she's asleep. He comes into her room and is watching her sleep, and he doesn't talk. So this is not really in his POV, but in his head, we know what he's saying in his head. In his head, he's saying all this stuff, bad stuff about her. He's calling her a slut. I'm just gonna say it. He's calling her a slut. He's like, oh, she probably doesn't even care if it's me, my brother, or my father. She sleeps around. You know, it's just all this horrible stuff he's saying about her. Which, do I agree with Tiernan's decisions to sleep with every man in this house? No. But I digress. He goes on to touch her. She's asleep. She is not awake. We know, and if you are familiar with like BDSM and stuff like that, there is a term for this where you have to get consent to touch someone while they are sleeping. Do you think that he got consent from her? Absolutely not. She eventually wakes up, but you know that feeling when you wake up but you're not really awake? It's like you're kind of in between sleep and not sleeping. That's where she is. She wakes up, she realizes it's Kaleb. And she's, and this is also incredibly sad because she's almost like pouring her heart out to him. And is like, you know, do you even like me? I feel like you don't like me. I feel like you only like me when we do things like this, like sexual things. And that is, I think as a woman, I can't relate because I, one, have never been in a relationship, and two, I'm still a virgin. But women or girls, women and girls, especially young ones, like my age, maybe a little younger, maybe a little older, I can imagine it feels, and I see women and girls talk about this all the time, I can imagine it feels incredibly awful, and it crushes your self-esteem when you feel like someone only wants you because of your body and because of sex. I can imagine that feels so soul-crushing because you're so much more than that. Especially as a woman, you know what I mean? You're so much more than your body. No matter how much society wants to tell us that we are only here because we need to bear children and serve men and only for our bodies, it's not true. And it breaks my heart every time I hear a woman/girl say that they feel like someone only wants them for sex. And it breaks my heart even more when they're in a relationship with that person and they don't want to leave, because sometimes it's okay. Sometimes the love is good. It's not love, first of all, but I can imagine that feels incredibly sad and soul crushing and self-esteem crushing. And I never ever want to experience that. So to hear Tiernan basically pouring her heart out to him and saying, I only feel like you only want me, or you only like me when we do things like this, I teared up because I was like, that is so awful. Like, and on top of all the issues she has from her past and her parents and them neglecting her, she never wants to feel neglected. So of course it's natural for her, if she gives something, she gets something back. So she's like, oh, okay, like if I give my body, then they'll love me back, which is the saddest mindset to have ever. Breaks my heart. So basically she's pouring her heart out to him. Then he goes on to restrain her, right? There was a belt he gifted her for her birthday, and it was like a, you know, a wearable belt, but the notches, you know, the notches that you put the little thing through, went all the way down the belt. And at the time when she got it, she was like, oh, like this is really nice, but like my waist is not that small. And Noah is basically like, yeah, but your wrists are. I mean, that scene gagged me, but I thought he was joking. You know what I mean? I thought he was like, oh, but your wrists are, like as a joke. No, as he's touching her, he stops touching her. He restrains her hands, so she can't touch. She's still half delirious at this point. And he goes to have relations with her, right? And this whole time in her head, she's thinking, she's like, this doesn't feel good. Like, I don't like this. So she's actively, and this is the first time in the book where the author in her head like doesn't make the thoughts in her head be like, she's saying stop, but also she kind of likes it. Like, no, she's actively like, Kaleb, stop. Kaleb, stop. And he's not stopping. Eventually, she wiggles her way out of the restraints and pushes him off and runs. She's running across the hall to Noah's room. And it's not like he stood there and was like, oh God, like, what did I just do? Like, no, he's running after her, like, trying to catch her. He grabs her and then she hits him, runs into Noah's room, locks the door, crawls into bed with Noah and is like hugging him because she's scared for her life. And Kaleb is banging on the door, like trying to get to her. Eventually he gives up and like walks away. Noah wakes up and he's like, what happened? Like, what did he do? And she's so scared that she doesn't want to tell him. So she's just like, nothing, it's fine, just go back to sleep. And hugging him, like shaking, like scared. And so that is when Noah finally tells her why Kaleb doesn't talk. But I almost feel like him telling, because granted, Noah doesn't know what happened because she didn't tell him. But I also feel like that was a way of him, because he knew Kaleb was at the door, right? So it had to be, and also she was nude. He was naked. So it's not hard to put two and two together of what happened, right? I feel like him telling her why the trauma that Kaleb went through was necessary because she needed to know, but it was also a way of him excusing his behavior because he's like, he's been through so much. And I'm like, yeah, but like, don't take that out on me. You know what I mean? Like, that's why I'm saying I don't think his trauma is an excuse to treat Tiernan the way he treated her. Right? I don't. It's not. I don't care. He's 23 years old. He's a grown man. He knows right from wrong. I don't care if you can't talk. I don't care if you're choosing not to talk. You know right from wrong. You know when you're doing something wrong. And he knows because we find out later in his head, like he writes and stuff. He has this anger towards her that makes him want to hurt her. He said that. And I'm just like, that is incredibly terrifying. In a day and age where we have men, and I'm using a real life example, we have men like Wade Wilson who will kill women just because, for no reason, and he has no remorse. For no reason, he would kill a woman that was in his bed just because she pissed him off. Words, his words. You know what I mean? So for him to have this anger towards her and he doesn't even know why is incredibly terrifying to me, and it doesn't make me feel sorry for him. It's really weird. It's really weird. That was the one scene that almost made me not want to finish the book, but I told myself I would, and I knew I wanted to do a review, so I finished it. But that scene was probably the most triggering scene I've ever read. And granted, I haven't read many. I'm not a fan of the dark romance. There are probably more triggering things to read, but that was just really, I just didn't expect it. It was crazy. The next morning, Tiernan is, no, this is not the next morning. This is like maybe 2 or 3 days later. Tiernan hasn't been talking much, understandably, but her uncle and his son are like trying to talk to her, and they're like, are you okay? And she's like, I'm fine. And they're like, you haven't really talked much. And the way they excuse his behavior is by telling her, he's in love with you, Tiernan. I'm sorry. I don't think that someone that is in love with me would try to have relations with me. I'm actively telling you to stop and you don't. And then when I don't give you what you want, you go and destroy something that meant so much to me. Like, wow. How are you excusing his behavior right now? And then they bring up the fact that he's been through so much. He's been through trauma. Like, you remind him of his mother, blah, 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 blah. I'm not your mom. You, like, I don't know, you might see me in her, or see her in me. I'm not your mother. That does not give you an excuse to treat me the way you treat me. You know what I mean? It was incredibly frustrating, and I, like, the fact that they, like, said that. I mean, Jake said, he was like, yeah, he was wrong, but there's no but. He was wrong, period, the end. That is it. Bro, and when I tell you, Kaleb's character frustrated me so bad. I hated him. I was like, this man is an animal. That's exactly what he acted like. Since he didn't talk, he had incredibly animalistic mannerisms to me. And it almost made me uncomfortable because I'm like, why are you acting like this? I don't know. It was weird. Coming to the end of this, because that's all I want to say on Kaleb's character, because my God. Something else I wanted to talk about. So eventually she forgives Kaleb. They start falling in love. So she thinks. It was at one point she thought she might have been pregnant because she missed her period by 3 days. Her period eventually came and she was like, oh my God, thank God. Like, I don't want to get pregnant right now. Because she's still 18, mind you. She's up in Kaleb's room and I feel like every girl has done this at some point. She kind of like lifts up her shirt and is looking at her stomach and envisioning what it would be like if she was pregnant. Every girl does it. I think it's just a universal thing. Kaleb and Noah come into his room and catch her. And at first they're looking at her like, are you? And she's like, no, I'm not. I just like missed my period, but I have it and I was just being stupid and wondering what it would be like if I was pregnant. Kaleb takes her downstairs into the bathroom, gets her birth control pills out of the cabinet and throws them into the trash. She, being logical, is like, no, like, dude, like, no, like, we are still young. I'm 18. I don't want to be a mom yet. Like, no. She takes her pills out of the trash can. He takes them back. He tries to take them back, throw them in the trash. And she's trying to reason with him, like, no, like, we can't be parents yet. Like, first of all, they're just now really getting together. And she's just like, no, I don't want to be a mom. Like, no. Eventually, he gets his way. She lets him get his way, and he throws the pills away. Then after she throws the pills away, she actively starts thinking, okay, well, maybe we could have a baby. Like, maybe, like, I still have my period, so I can't get pregnant for at least a week. I'm like, are you kidding? Are you kidding? Like, I thought it was some type of sick joke. She was actually considering having a child with him. She's 18. She hasn't even gone to college yet. And Jake explicitly told her, he said, don't get pregnant. Because he knew that she was with Kaleb. He was like, just don't get pregnant. You're still 18. And she's like, I know. And he's like, and you're going to go to college. And she's like, yeah, like I will. And then in her head, she's like, I think. The thing that saddens me sometimes about girls is they will throw their entire future and life away for a guy. For love. And I'm like, no. And I've been through this. Like, I've never been in a relationship, but when I was in high school, I wanted to be in a relationship so incredibly bad. So bad. Like, it was bad. And now that I'm older, I've grown out of that phase where, yeah, sometimes I still want to be in a relationship, but I know realistically, I'm young. I'm 20 years old. There is so much of my life ahead of me, and I have other things to prioritize other than men. I want to build my career. I want to, there's just so much more. I want to spend time with my friends without having somebody in my ear saying, where are you? What are you doing? What are you doing? Sometimes I do get sad that I'm single, but at the end of the day, I know I would rather be single than get in a relationship that's going to harm me mentally, emotionally, physically. And I for sure am not going to throw my life away, my future away just for some guy. Because a lot of people my age are having children and getting married young. And what I don't think they realize, and maybe they do and they just don't care, is when you're young and you decide to have a child, your life is done. Like, your personal life is done. You're not getting it back. Because people think when they have kids, oh, I only have to raise them until they're 18 and then I'm done. Nope. That is a lifelong job. They are going to need you for the rest of your life until you lay your head down in that grave. It's not just the 18-year contract. It's much bigger than that. Like, that's why I'm over here. Right now, I'm just like, no, I don't want children. Will that change in the future? Maybe. But realistically right now, I'm like, I don't know if I want kids. And I'm not supposed to know. Maybe. Some people know if they want kids in the future. I just don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. So I'm just kind of focused on living my life right now. Anyways, sorry I went off on a tangent. I want to talk about the ending. So the way it ends is she goes back to California. She signs up for college. She wants to go to a design school. I don't know if it's interior design or fashion or whatever, but she wants to go to design school. She's there and she's in her parents' house. And, you know, she has no one to live with her there. I mean, her nanny offers, she's like, come live with me. Or, you know, rent an apartment. Don't stay in this big house by yourself. And Tiernan is just like, I don't need anybody. She has maybe like a month before she has to go for college. So she's just spending her time in California, kind of being by herself, you know, making a routine for herself. And Noah ends up coming to LA with her. I mean, they don't go together, but like she knew he was going to come to LA anyway because he's starting his career in motocross racing. And, you know, they kind of catch up on the beach. He finds her on the beach. They catch up and she ends up asking him to come stay with her at the house. So, because the house is huge and she has it by herself. So she ends up making a room for him. One day she's in her house and she wakes up and she hears something outside. Oh, so before I say that, she used to have a tire swing in her backyard when she was younger. And when her parents passed away, her nanny took it down. Don't know why, but I guess she just took it down because, I don't know. She wakes up, she looks outside. The tire swing is back up. And she's like, how did that get there? Like, did Mira put it back up? Or Mira put it back up? Like, I don't know. Like, wow, how'd it get there? Kaleb is standing there. And it's been, you know, a few months since they've been separated. Maybe like 3 or 4 months. So she goes downstairs and goes outside and he's standing there with the tire swing. And she's like, what are you doing here? He doesn't talk, obviously. So she goes over there. He calls her over. She goes over there. He puts her on the tire swing and is like swinging her around. And she's like, how did you know about the tire swing? And he pulls out a picture he found online of her mother and father playing on the tire swing or whatever. Something happens. I don't know. She asks him something and he talks to her. He speaks. And she's like so incredibly shocked. She's like, oh my god, like you're talking? And he's like, yeah, like after you left, I just like, I guess he's saying he reflected on his actions and what he did. And he started practicing to talk out loud by reading out this book that they read together out loud. And he basically says the cliche romance book ending thing and is like, I want to be where you are. I won't be happy unless I'm with you. Blah, 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 blah. And, you know, she falls for it. And she's like, I love you. He's like, I love you too. But it's all she ever wanted from him was for him to talk to her. Because she spent so much of her childhood having her parents neglect her and not talk to her, that she's like, I can't be with someone that's not going to talk to me, maybe ever. I can't have children with you if you're never going to speak to your children. That was kind of the reason why she left him in the first place. So when he started talking to her, she fell for it. And she was like, oh my god, I love you. He's like, I love you too. So the way it ends in the epilogue was, I mean, they get together. 5 years later, they're together. They have a kid. You know, she finished school. She got pregnant while she was still in school, but she finished school. They're together. The uncle ends up getting with the nanny. And Noah, they didn't say that if he was in a relationship or not, but, you know, he spends time with their kid and stuff like that. And it's just the classic romantic happily ever after. She gets the guy, he gets the girl. Everyone's happy. I was disappointed with that ending. What I was looking for the ending, I was looking for a more bittersweet ending. What I envisioned for the ending was she moved back to California. She would sign up for school, which she did. She would have Noah, because I didn't even mind the fact that Noah was in LA and they were gonna live together. I didn't, because I actually think that Noah finally learned that they were not meant to be, and his feelings for her were not love, at least not in that way. So he finally learned that, you know, she wasn't for him, and he was focused on his career. So they would live together, or like, you know, whenever he comes back, because he'd probably be traveling a lot, whenever he comes back, that would be his home base, and they would kind of be roommates. I was looking for that and the fact that she would keep in touch with her uncle. You know, maybe her uncle still end up with a nanny. I don't know. I did not want her to end up with Kaleb. Why? Because I feel like her ending up with Kaleb overlooked all of the terrible things that he did to her. I don't think that someone can change that much within a few months. You know what I mean? Because they hadn't been separated. It's not like it was like 2 years later and then they match up or meet up again. It was months. And he magically just comes back and is like, I've changed. I love you. I want to be where you are. And she's like, okay, we'll be together. That, and I know that's the classic romantic ending, but I think I would have enjoyed the ending more if it was more bittersweet. They didn't end up together. She goes to college. She makes friends because she's never had true friends before. She isn't a mom by 23. 23 is still really young to be a mom. You know what I mean? Like, and by the time, you know, she's a mom by 23, he's 28. So, I mean, I don't know. The ending did disappoint me. I can't lie. It was fine. But my overall review of the ending was I didn't really enjoy it. It made me sad because I didn't want her to end up with Kaleb. I wanted her to live her life the way she wanted to live it. And maybe that is the way she wanted to live it. But I think people don't realize how fulfilling friendships are. Especially for a woman. Female friendships are so fulfilling. It's something you can never find in a relationship. And you could say the same thing vice versa. Something about a relationship is never something you can find in friendships. But I just think for women, female friendships are so fulfilling that it makes you feel okay being single because you know you have your friends, right? So it's just the fact that I don't think she ever went on to make any new friends. And I wish I would have seen that for her. I wish I would have seen her flourish in the way of, you know, that way. Coming to the end of this video, my overall review of the book. Did I enjoy it? Most of the time I did not. Just because a lot of the things that happened in the book made me very uncomfortable / frustrated. And I don't like to be uncomfortable and frustrated when I read my books. I'm not bashing the book at all. Do I think the book is entertaining? Yes. There were some parts that I enjoyed, some parts that I laughed at, but overall I just don't think the book was for me. Because I've seen people on TikTok who really enjoy this book, and all power to you. I'm glad you enjoy it. It's just not for me, personally. At the end of my reviews, I always rate my books or whatever I'm reviewing. My rating for this book, my honest rating for this book, out of 5 stars, I give it a 2 out of 5 stars. And I don't mean to be harsh. It's just that this was an extremely hard read for me. Like I said, I was gonna shelf this book. I was gonna not finish it until I ran into that friend and they were like, you have to finish it because the ending. That was the only reason why I finished this book. And I thought I can do a review out of it. So I was like, I might as well finish it and just review it on my channel. So in case anybody was thinking about reading it or, you know, is looking for new recommendations. If you're not bothered, this is my takeaway from it. And this is how I would recommend the book. If you're not, first of all, when that lady said you have to set your morals aside to read this book, she was absolutely correct. And I should have listened a little bit more, but I didn't. If you are not bothered by implied incest, then go ahead and read the book. If you're not bothered by explicit scenes that feel maybe not so comfortable, go ahead and read it. I'm saying it's just not the type of book for me, because I think this being labeled as a romance book is like, it's like I wouldn't classify it as a romance. And erotica, absolutely I would. But romance, to me, this is just not my type of romance. Or this is not my type of love. I don't think anything about this was love. I think it was a 17, 18-year-old girl trying to find comfort in someone. And she found it in these 3 men that she lived with. And I think this could have been an incredibly good found family book. It could have been a great found family book. You know what I mean? I would have loved it if it was that. But just what it is now as an erotica, I didn't really enjoy it that much. So that is why I'm giving it a 2 out of 5 stars. So yeah, that is my review. Sorry if it seemed kind of all over the place. Like I said, I just finished the book yesterday. So I still feel like I'm kind of processing a lot of the information and things that happened in the book. But I hope this was up to your standards. But I just wanted to really give my honest review on this book. And there was still a lot of things that I didn't talk about that happened in the book. So if you still want to know what happened like more in depth in this book, I would, yeah, go ahead and get it and read it. Like I said before, I am open to all opinions on this book. So if you enjoyed it, let me know why you enjoyed it. If you hated it, let me know why you hated it. If you were indifferent to it and you were just like, oh, it was okay, let me know. And I just love reading you guys' opinions on things, even if they are different from mine. Because I just want to know, you know, how you saw it from a different perspective that isn't mine. Despite what I said about this book, I am thinking about giving some of her other books a try. Just because I've seen some of her other books talked about on TikTok, like Punk 57. My friend, one of my best friends, is actually reading her Corrupt series right now just because her other friend wanted her to read it. And then one of my other friends told me she just put out a book called Five Brothers, and I read the what it's about, and it seems really interesting. So I'm thinking she's not a bad author at all. The book was really well written, I will say that, but I think this specific book by her just was not for me. So I'm gonna give some of her other books a try. Maybe I'll review them on the channel. If you guys want me to review more of Penelope Douglas books, let me know. I would be very, very interested in doing that. If you guys liked it, make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and leave a comment down below. Like I said, of your opinions. If you've read this book, let me know what you thought about it, what you didn't like, what you did like. I'm open to all and any opinions. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!